The following accounts, drawn from recollections of former pupils across Britain, illustrate the strict disciplinary atmosphere that prevailed in many secondary schools during the post-war decades. Corporal punishment, administered by both male and female teachers, was widely regarded as an accepted means of maintaining order and discipline within the classroom. At Harrowfield School in Harold Hill, Romford, one former pupil recalled frequent truancy and smoking behind the school grounds between 1958 and 1962. Such behaviour, she remembered, often resulted in punishment with the cane. Former pupils of Harper Green School in Bolton spoke vividly of Miss Bradbury, later Mrs. Mortimer, a physical education teacher remembered for her stern discipline. Several recalled being struck on the legs for misconduct during lessons. At Hartshead High School in Ashton-under-Lyne, pupils remembered Miss Laverty, another physical education teacher, who reportedly sent girls to receive the cane for failing to hold their hockey sticks correctly during games lessons. Memories from Heartsease High School in Norwich centred upon Mrs. Mansfield, who taught both physical education and biology. One former pupil recalled travelling to school in Mrs. Mansfield's small red sports car and feeling greatly privileged by the experience. Yet the same teacher was also remembered for administering punishment with a gym shoe or slipper, which pupils described as particularly painful. Others recalled receiving similar punishments for smoking or disruptive behaviour. At Hengrove School in Bristol, former pupils remembered Mrs. Tubb as a strict disciplinarian who was known to use the slipper as punishment. Former students of Heoldu Comprehensive School in Cardiff similarly recalled receiving the cane from members of staff, while at Herbert Morrison School, one former pupil remembered Mrs. Burgess as generally well-liked, despite once having administered corporal punishment. At Hermitage Comprehensive in South Shields, a former pupil recounted being caned across the fingers by Mrs. Copeman for answering back in class, recalling that the pain lasted for several hours. From High Ridge School in Scunthorpe came recollections of teachers whose reputations for discipline became legendary among pupils. Mrs. Whitehouse's cane, reportedly nicknamed the Brute, was remembered with particular apprehension. At Hilltop High School in West Bromwich, pupils similarly recalled receiving the cane from staff members for misconduct. Former pupils of Hollins High School in Manchester described incidents of classroom disruption involving stink bombs, offences which resulted in punishment with the cane from teaching staff. At Holmwood Secondary School in Slough, memories included repeated canings from a rural studies teacher, Mr. Wharton. One former pupil from Honley High School in Kirklees observed that disciplinary standards in earlier decades were far stricter than those experienced by younger generations, recalling punishments as severe as receiving the slipper for incorrect school uniform attire. At Hawley Comprehensive School in Surrey, Miss Weeks was remembered for administering the slipper across pupils' backsides on several occasions. Pupils from the 100 of Who Comprehensive School in Kent remembered Mrs. Thorne, a physical education teacher, whose punishments with the slipper were said to be particularly severe. At Herne Court School in Christchurch, one former student recalled being punished by Miss Smith for leaving the dormitory during the night. Former pupils of Huyton with Robbie Secondary School in Liverpool described an atmosphere in which teachers commanded unquestioned authority. The music teacher, Mr. Harry Leader, was especially remembered for keeping a collection of canes of varying thicknesses, from which pupils were instructed to choose before punishment was administered. At Icknield High School in Luton, several teachers were remembered as particularly formidable figures. Former pupils recalled receiving the cane from both Miss Smith and the headmistress, Mrs. Froud. Memories from Joseph Eastham High School in Manchester focused heavily upon Miss Holden, whose use of the cane was widely remembered by former students. Several reflected upon the frequency and severity of the punishments administered. At Joseph Whittaker School in Mansfield, one former pupil recalled an entire class being caned after no individual admitted responsibility for opening a fire door. Others described receiving corporal punishment for offences such as smoking, including one pupil who maintained innocence of the accusation. Another former student reflected, many years later, that while the punishments had seemed excessive at the time, they were now regarded with a degree of understanding. These recollections provide a striking insight into a period in British education when corporal punishment was commonplace and widely accepted as part of school life. Though such practices would later become the subject of growing public criticism and eventual abolition, they remain deeply embedded in the memories of many who experienced them.